Here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Know Your Resource panel here for the Title IX office. We're very excited to have you all here. This is the first event of many for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which started yesterday. So we are excited to have you all here, especially to learn a little bit more about the resources that are available to you, not only on campus, but off campus as well. Whether you have experienced violence, you have a friend who may be going through something and you're looking to support them, or you're a part of a process yourself and you're looking to learn more information. We have a lot of individuals here for you today to tell you some information about the resources that are available to them, so that you're able to learn a bit more. And we're just gonna get started by introducing ourselves. So I'm just gonna ask all the panelists, and we didn't even discuss how we want to do this, but everyone can just go around popcorn. We may have some Zoom fails, and that's perfectly okay. Your name, the office or agency you're representing, and your pronouns for today. Thank you. Christina,
I'm happy to start off.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
So I'm Steve Matthews. I'm the Director of Campus Housing and Community Living here on the SUNY Plattsburgh campus. And my pronouns are he, him, and his. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Christina Moquin. I'm one of the counselors in the Counseling Center on campus, in the Student Health and Counseling Center, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, I'm Jackie Bogle. I manage the Global Education Office on campus, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
My name is Courtney Titherington, and I am the community educator at Stop Domestic Violence and volunteer coordinator at Stop Domestic Violence through Behavioral Health Services North, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Hi, my name is Melinda Seiden. I'm an assistant district attorney in Clinton County. More specifically, I handle all the sexual assault cases for the county of Clinton. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Hi, I'm Jen Curry. I am the Assistant Director of Student Accessibility Services here on campus, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Hi, everybody. Larry Allen from the Student Conduct Office. I serve as director in this office. Hope everybody's having an awesome day.
My name is Michelle Trombley. I work in Human Resource Services, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
Hi, my name is Casey Belrose. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the Enough is Enough coordinator at Planned Parenthood Sexual Assault Services.
Hi, I'm Butterfly Blaise Boire, and I am the Title IX coordinator at SUNY Plattsburgh.
And last but not least, Investigator Facteau.
Hi, my name is Jessica Facteau. I'm an investigator with the New York State University Police here at SUNY Plattsburgh. My pronouns are she and her.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I realized I didn't introduce myself. So hi, everyone. My name is Zyaijah Nadler, and I am the Violence Prevention, Education, and Outreach Coordinator for the Title IX office here at SUNY Plattsburgh. We have a few other individuals who were not able to join us today. So please do stay tuned to when this video gets released on YouTube. Their questions will still be included in the caption and not a bio, not a caption. In the area underneath YouTube videos, that tells you what everything's about. So we will still have their questions answered to make sure you're getting all the information you needed. Today's conversation is separated in a few ways. We're going to talk to those, starting with those who take reports. We're going to learn a little bit about whether or not they're private or confidential, as well as what kind of reports can come through their office. And then we're going to follow up about the process of reporting to these individuals. So we can get started with our very own Title IX coordinator and then bounce over to everyone else who takes reports in their office.
Okay. So just starting to outline whether it's private or confidential, Zyaijah, is that step one? Okay. Yep. So if you file a report with the Title IX office, it is a private report. So just to explain the difference between private and confidential, private means that the information will be kept within our office or our files, but would be shared with other campus officials or stakeholders or outside agencies if and when necessary. So it's on a need to know basis, and that is communicated to folks when they file a report. Even though sometimes that information has to be shared out with others, I always make sure that the individual filing the report is party to that and that they know who I have to share that information and why. So I'm just not doing it without them having some autonomy and some information in regards to those decisions.
I can go next, just because it's very similar with University Police as it is with Title IX. So we are private, and everything that Butterfly said is pretty much exactly the way it works for us as far as sharing information. And I don't know what other question I'm supposed to answer, or is that it for now?
That one's it for now.
Okay.
I can speak to our center is a little different. We're confidential sources. So if somebody reports either to a nurse or a medical provider or a mental health professional in our center, it's under the umbrella of Hipaa federal privacy law. And it is true, we give options, you can go report, you can do different things, but it's completely up to that individual. And we cannot report unless they want us to.
I'll piggyback off of that because we are also quite similar at Stop Domestic Violence. All of our stuff is confidential. We do try to reach out to the public too, to make ourselves known. We are having a more referral based with our providers, so our providers can refer their clients to us directly and we can reach out on that behalf. That's kind of new for us to be able to offer that to providers, because before we were more confidential and wanted people to just come to us without them feeling like they were being pressured. So it is very, you come talk to us, we chat, we can set you up with things, but it is all up to you on whether we just give all of your options and then you tell us what you want us to help you with. We do, although we are confidential, we can do referrals so we can talk to other people on your behalf if you want us to. And that's just a signature. And as soon as you don't want to anymore, it's a signature on the same paper and it's done. But I think that's it.
Yeah, I'll hop in as well. Certainly in our residence halls, our community advocates and community directors often will talk to students. The folks who are CAs and CDs are mandated to move that information along in the process. The student can have it go forward in an anonymous fashion, or they can attach their name to it. But similar to what other folks have said, the victim is always going to be in control of what happens as far as the response to that information. But I do want folks to know that the CAs and CDs, and they should be sharing this when a student starts to talk to them, that they're mandated to move that information forward to their supervisors.
And just quickly to add to Steve's point, we do here at SUNY Plattsburgh have a number of responsible employees, which is the term we use. So our academic advisors here, some of our student athletes, so those who are captains or co-captains, our club and executive board members, so presidents, vice presidents, treasurers of clubs and secretaries as well, are all deemed responsible employees, as well as our coaches on athletic teams and a few other individuals. Michelle, would you like to talk a little bit about for faculty and staff, not to put you on the spot, but about them coming to report as well?
Yeah, sure. So Human Resource Services, we are as Butterfly laid out, we're a private resource. So when you do come to us, given the circumstances that are presented to us, we cannot act in a confidential manner if for any reason there is action that needs to be taken. And depending on the severity of the offense that we are being alerted to, would kind of, the investigation of that report would then kind of dictate what offices or other resources we bring in to assist in that investigation as it moves forward.
And with the district attorney's office, we're private and not confidential.
Thank you. So a question just came in referring to explaining what responsible employees are required to do and not to do. So responsible employees are required to inform the students, one, that they are a responsible employee. We want to make sure that's very clear because as many of the others individuals shared, we want the person who's experienced violence to be in the seats, to drive the seat, to know what they want to do. So those individuals are required to let them know that they are a responsible employee so that the individual who's experienced violence or is sharing a story, if they've been a witness or a bystander, so that they know that, hey, you know, if you don't want to continue telling this story, you don't have to. Here are your confidential resources. So we want them to be able to choose their next steps because responsible employees are required to share their information with the Title IX office. If there's something that's extremely urgent, there's an emergency, we do ask that they obviously call 911 because that would, or university police, because they would be able to get there the fastest. So making sure that they know their responsibility is to inform someone higher up in those settings. What they are not required to do is investigate. So they do not have to ask several questions and continue to pry or get a lot of information out. If the person is willing to share information, that's great. If they're not, the responsible employee does not have to worry about those situations. Again, the person who will be helping them next is thing. Something that I always recommend responsible employees, if they have the time, if they're willing, just as simple as, you know, going to the health or counseling center with an individual can be extremely helpful in eliminating those barriers, and someone may be feeling nervous or scared or uncomfortable. So if the responsible employee is comfortable with it, I always say you're more likely to help someone get help if you're going with them to that help, because it's a little bit more comforting than going alone and just getting directions to go somewhere.
Can I just add something to that, Zyaijah, as far as if they're reporting and they're going criminal? If that responsible employee happens to be the first disclosure of an offense, they would be spoken to by myself or whoever the investigative agency would be as that first person that the individual disclosed to. So there is kind of an expectation of cooperability with that. So just wanted to kind of put that out there so that folks know that they may be reached out to by law enforcement in the event that they are the person that gets that the individual discloses to.
It would also be they'd also be talked to, interviewed by my office as well.
Perfect. Thank you both for adding that. Did I miss anyone else who takes reports? I don't think so. I think I caught everyone. So that covers the private and confidentiality. And some of us take all the same reports. But if there's someone who takes different reports, please feel free to share that. So when I say same, that's referring to reports of sexual violence that include sexual assault, sexual exploitation, what am I missing? Sexual harassment, things of those natures, as well as interpersonal violence, which covers dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking. Actually, Melinda, if you don't mind speaking a little bit to the revenge porn law that also passed in New York State, and Investigator Facteau, you can also jump in and help as well.
Sure. Also now, one thing that has changed that is a great change, that there are criminal repercussions for sharing naked identifiable photos of someone that might have sent you. So if you're in a relationship with them and at one point you exchange photos with them, if they are now to share that with the public, it's a crime. So they can get in a lot of trouble for that. And I know that in the last year alone, we've handled multiple investigations and cases involving that. But also too, I think one thing that's important to know is that there doesn't have to be an arrest in a case for you to have to be able to speak to myself or anyone else. I talk to victims of crimes many times prior to a case even being arrested, or even if an arrest is not going to happen, just so they know what our job is and what resources I still can provide them other resources other than being the prosecutor on their case. And in revenge porn cases, that happens a lot.
Thank you so much for adding that. So for those of you who do take reports, we've covered whether it's private or confidential. Would you mind sharing what the process of reporting is like? So are they coming into the office? We know given COVID, some of those things have changed. Are they phone calls? So please feel free to share what the process somewhat looks like.
I can go if you'd like. So with University Police, we're in a unique situation in the sense that reporting comes to us in several different ways. It could be through the Office of Title IX, through CAs or CDs from the dorms, from third parties that are concerned and maybe just looking for some resources, from the health center, the hospital, or the counseling center if they have an individual who would like to further their options, or the individual coming into our station themselves, or we're responding to a situation that maybe had just occurred. In most situations, from my experience, has been we get reports through Title IX. And at that point, they've decided that they're either interested in moving forward criminally, or they would like to know what that process would look like. So essentially, if myself or the inspector is not at work that day, an officer would only take very preliminary information from the individual so that they're not being interviewed by anyone other than myself. So it's not, I think sometimes people may feel pushed away, either if it's the reporting individual or a third party, but it's really just to minimize that exposure and that trauma from retelling what has taken place. So it's important for folks to know that typically with University Police, it will be myself that handles those cases. So it's a matter of just getting myself the information so that I can follow up on that. And then it would be a series of meetings. It's very rarely that it's just one time that I speak with an individual. It tends to be multiple times until there's a level of trust to be able to share what has occurred. And even in the first couple of meetings, it may just be resources and their options of reporting, whether it be with University Police or any other agency, or providing resources so that they're fully equipped to make that decision on their own.
Okay, I can kind of speak to what happens in the Health and Counseling Center. So sometimes we get referrals either from the CAs or the CDs or from the Title IX office, different types of entities on campus. And if that's the case, we reach out to the student and we kind of see what they want. It's again putting the survivor in the driver's seat, and we can talk on the phone, we can do Zoom. Most of us are fully vaccinated and comfortable with disclosing that to students. And we have a room set up where we can literally be 12 feet apart, masks and all the social distancing thing, so that they're most comfortable safety wise with the virus and other things. So we kind of give them that option if they, different ways to kind of have a session or get information. And sometimes people just self-refer. They either call or they walk in. If you do walk into the health center, they just check your temperature. I don't think, they're doing anything else in terms of COVID screening. And of course you have to wear a mask, but that's kind of how we're operating.
I'll just real quickly, you've heard CAs, CDs referring, that's really our main responsibility. We want to make the student feel as comfortable as we can, as safe as we can, but to refer to the experts here on the campus and in the local community we're more in a support situation at that point, but to be seen as somebody that you can go to.
And I think that's an important addition to add to the responsible employee's role. They may be the first person that someone discloses something to or makes a report, but they're not in a position to act on that report. So that's the difference between their role as someone if they receive the report versus if they come to the Title IX office or university police or counseling or health services. So in terms of the process through the Title IX office, I think one misconception is our role in the process. And what I want to point out before we start speaking about it is that in my role as a Title IX coordinator and currently in terms of taking formal requests, I have to be an impartial individual. So I'm someone that does not serve as an advocate or a support person to either party. I'm an individual that someone would come and file a report and I would go over with them a form in terms of their rights, resources, policies, and options, and help to get them connected to those support people if those are the things that they need, whether it's an advocate, health services, counseling services, academic accommodations. There's all kinds of things that I help to work through with them. But then likewise, I would do that same thing with an accused individual. So if an accused individual is coming in as part of any sort of informal resolution or a formal resolution, which I'll come back to in a moment, I would also meet with them to make sure they understand their rights and they also have access to resources. Because ultimately, if someone's making a formal action against someone, it does open up the door in terms of interim measures that we can offer them, such as no contact orders or changing classroom assignments or things of that nature. But we have an obligation based on reporting individuals' rights and accused individuals' rights through due process that both individuals can continue their college education unless one of those interim measures is, say, a suspension while the process is working through. So we have very specific things we have to follow for all groups, but we help to get folks connected to those resources that they need so that they are feeling supported through that process. It's just not our office that would serve as a support person to either party. Additionally, we meet with witnesses. If someone files an informal complaint, what that means essentially is they're ultimately either just saying, hey, Butterfly, I want you to keep this on record because one of my jobs is to track patterns. So let's say someone comes and files a report with me and they share a name that I have attached to another report, that in some instances, once we have a pattern of behavior, is going to shift the conversation that I need to have with the person that's filing the report. Meaning, I need to let you know that this is an individual where there's been previously reported actions, and therefore these are the things that the college needs to do in this instance. That happens in a very small amount of time. Most of the time it's the reporting individual's decision whether they want to just keep it informal or move towards a formal action. An informal resolution can look like anything from the perspective of just getting them connected to academic resources and accommodations. And generally, if that's the case, I'm not reaching out to the accused individual if there's no pattern of behavior. They aren't given any notice that that person's filed a report against them. Because again, this information is based on a need to know basis and what part in the process we are or aren't entering. And then for other things in terms of informal resolution, but never when it involves a level of violence, such as sexual violence or dating violence or domestic violence, we are now offering informal resolutions where we serve to provide some restorative justice in terms of mediation between folks. So if a reporting individual requests to have that opportunity to sit across the table or across the Zoom or whatever way in which we're doing it at this point in time and have a conversation where the reporting individual can explain how the behavior impacted them and the person who engaged in that behavior can hear that and respond to that and take accountability and apologize for that behavior. That's an informal resolution. Other informal resolutions we might go into is just maybe changing academic accommodations for the person that's reporting so that they can get through the rest of the semester if they share a class or a residence hall. We might be moving people in that way. And then a formal would be when someone's saying, hey, I want you to engage in a human rights investigation and I want you to move forward to have this person held accountable through the student conduct system. And that's actually the abbreviated version of all of that, but that's what I'll leave with right now.
I will go next. So for Stop Domestic Violence, things are a little bit different with COVID. We are trying to keep clients out of our office, but we have had, so if you've ever had experience with us, we've had some wonderful grants just coming through in the last year, which allows us to provide more to people, which is wonderful and amazing. And also more contact availability to our clients. So we now have work cell phones. We can even give out for texting and things like that. Phone calls, something happens, you can contact us directly, your worker directly, to have that conversation with them. But when you come in to our office, we do have a referral process. If you're more comfortable with a certain provider, you already established that contact and that comfortability, we can set up now to communicate through that provider with you so that you feel already comfortable, because we know that we are strangers and you have to share new information with a whole nother person. To make that transition a little bit easier, we do have that available. We do right now for our Hipaa and confidentiality forms, we send them directly to our anybody who's interested in becoming a client and talking with us. Although we can provide information to people without them going through the initial intake process. So it totally is up to where you're ready, your comfortability in the process. And we can break all that down when you call. And we do have the availability to do some transportation. Also, it was much easier before COVID, obviously, but we do have people, everybody wears masks, you sit in the back seat of the vehicle from us, and things like that, sanitize, obviously no temperature, all those things have to check off first before we can be able to provide transportation. But we're still, with COVID, the court system is going through the phone or Zoom. We can still sit with you, be with you for that. And we're lucky here, almost every one of our my colleagues is almost or is already vaccinated. So that is something for people coming to talk to us to feel a little bit more comfortable being around us. But I think mostly that is our process. If anybody has questions, please ask.
I can go next if that's okay. When it comes to the process of how you would meet with our office, we typically, most of our referrals come from law enforcement. So because I handle all sexual assaults for the county, typically law enforcement will reach out to me and say they've been referred a new investigation. And we just start going over the preliminaries as to what evidence there is, but who the parties are that are involved. And sometimes I do meet with the victims prior to an arrest even being made. I was kind of follow up what Butterfly said. I don't represent the victim because I represent the state of New York. So it's an important distinction that I'm not your attorney. However, with that being said, I am your advocate in the legal system. So when I do meet with you, I'm not sharing what you say to me to the other party unless there's a legal obligation for that. But with that being said, if there's something comes about that I would need to share certain information that's from our conversation, the individual would know about it immediately during that conversation. Sometimes we do meet with victims and their advocates. However, when we are prepping for any court situation, such as a trial or grand jury, I have to meet with the victim alone because I'm not allowed to have certain people in the room when we do prep for certain court instances. But regardless, I'm more than willing, if you're a victim in a case or even a victim's friend, if that's okay, to talk to you about what the criminal process is, where do you go from here, what options are available. And we try to give the victim as much input as possible. However, at the end of the day, it's our office that decides how the case is resolved. But it's very rarely that the victim isn't usually on board or in agreement with the decision, because I like to personally explain all the options available. So they have as much, I try to give them as much power as I can if in that type of situation.
I'll go next. So Human Resource Services, you can find us in the Kehoe building, and we can be reached in a variety of ways. As you've probably noticed, we do have a majority of our employees back on campus, myself included. So feel free to give my office a call. You can email us and we can get back to you. You can stop in. As I said, our office is open and available. We do work with, Title IX, or if there's a faculty or staff member that comes to us who is for some reason feeling unsafe on campus, we could refer them and say, call UP. They can escort you to your vehicle if you need it. We can arrange different parking situations. So there are some really good resources that we can offer if you do need it.
Like always trying to make sure I didn't miss anyone. All right, thank you. And that was actually a great transition into our next topic, which is our resources and accommodations. So we do have a few different resources and accommodations available on campus. And I just want to start with academics. So Jennifer, if you don't mind sharing, because we know that, if someone's experienced violence or if someone has a need, academics is important. That's what a lot of our students come to college for. So would you mind sharing a little bit about the academic accommodations that are available to students on campus?
Sure. So kind of how that comes to me usually is via referrals, either Title IX, or I've had counseling office, they'll reach out to me, or the student themselves. And then it's a conversation to meet with the student and see kind of where they're at as far as their classes are concerned and what their needs are going to be and how we can meet those needs. So for academics, our office can provide, note-taking services for students who are having a hard time in the classroom and, focus and distractibility, and that can be difficult at times. So we have note-taking services, extended time on testing services, and then there's advocacy. And a lot of what I do in my role is advocacy and working with the professor. We don't share information that's not needed other than, the student has extenuating circumstances, and just kind of explaining what might be helpful for accommodations with the professor and kind of negotiating those. So that can be extended time on due dates, if somebody is out of the, or not on campus for a period of time, just basically letting the professors know that that's the case, explaining that they're working with our office. It really is unique to the student and individual. It just depends, but it's an ongoing conversation that can kind of change as we move forward. But the primary thing that most students who we've worked with have needed is advocacy. And that's something we do depending on the need. So.
Thank you. And then a follow-up to that, is there any eligibility, or like you said, can someone just come through or just be referred?
So, I oversee disability service, accessibility services, but there really isn't, as far as eligibility, there is eligibility for certain things, but in situations where somebody's been referred to me, it's just whatever the student needs really in that moment. So we have that conversation, and more often than not, it's the need is advocacy. So a student can come to me and anybody can come to me when it's not a referral. Typically, if it's a referral, I already kind of have an idea of what the student's needs are as far as eligibility. So no, there's not, especially in these circumstances where if somebody needs the support, then they can come straight to our office.
And I would just add that sometimes the accommodations don't go through student support services. So for instance, if an individual is looking for an extension on a paper or additional time to complete something or excused absences, I will often facilitate that. And or we can work on situations where if both people are in the class, navigating what that's going to look like in terms of, are they going to continue to go to the same class and sit in the same room or in the Zoom session or so on and so forth. So sometimes it occurs in that way as well. And it really is important to point out, because I think some hesitation, a lot of times people hesitate to come forward to report, but furthermore to ask for accommodations, because there's a whole different reason. But one of the reasons why is because they feel like it's not their right, or that option isn't there for them. So I think it's important to highlight that under 129B, which is a 2015 New York State legislation, education law, it says that we must provide students reasonable accommodations in terms of housing or academia or otherwise, if they've experienced violence in some way. So that's something really important to explain to folks if you are that person taking that initial report, because sometimes it helps a little bit to take that step forward, knowing that it's a right, that it's a law, that it's something we must do. And then that gives it teeth too, because if I go to a faculty or staff member and request an accommodation and there's any sort of hesitation, we have that to back our request and say, work with that person to figure out what works for everyone, but also have that understanding that there are certain things we must do. It's not optional.
Awesome, thank you. Would anyone else like to popcorn their accommodations?
I'll go. Butterfly just mentioned housing. So we obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but we certainly do offer accommodations to students. And those are typically coming to us from other entities. So we work very closely with Jennifer's office for ADA accommodations and those types of things, with the health center and the counseling center. And certainly in situations that we're here to talk about today, we work very closely with Butterfly. And we really do take our lead from those areas of what does the presenting student need for an accommodation based on that scenario. And we trust the judgment of the folks that are contacting us. We're here to help the student. Helping the student does not involve us arguing about whether or not we should find a room for somebody. We do what we need to do and get the student taken care of. Like I said, we trust the judgment of the professionals who are in those roles implicitly. Do you want me to talk about those what kind of accommodations they are?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. So typically in a situation, if there's a sexual violence situation, the student may not feel comfortable in that room, in that residence hall. There's often friend groups involved. So we have the ability 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to facilitate that student getting to a place that's at least safe and secure for the time being until we can figure out a more permanent situation. And we would work with that student and whatever office was referring to us to make that happen. But a student should never feel awkward about that. That's what we're here for, is to meet that need that you have of your housing and being safe and secure in that.
And that includes, just to add to what Steve's saying, if a student experiences violence in the middle of the night, they can go to University Police, and housing is amazing in having rooms designated where someone can go there to a guest room till we have a chance to connect the dots and get people what they need.
And just adding to that, we've also accommodated students that may not already be residing on campus. We've accommodated students in need that are off-campus students but need a safe place as well. So housing's been, we've been very lucky to have housing and what they can give us as far as a resource for that, because we have utilized that in the past.
We actually, Stop Domestic Violence has, going off the housing piece for this moment, we have a wonderful opportunity specifically to kind of the students who don't live on campus, but it can be the students who live off campus or on campus as well, on and off. We have safe housing in Clinton County. So if something happens in the middle of the night, we have a hotline that's 24 hours. You call it, we get you in. There is the process of talking about what had happened and making sure we have a room available, and we can put you in. If we don't have a room available there, we now have funding to assist with hotel payments too, for a period of time. So there's that option as well, because our safe houses we have common areas. So if that also is very triggering for somebody, that can be something we talk about. as another alternative option that we can help with. And it's not just scooting over to homeless housing. So that's wonderful. We also have a new grant where we'll have 14 permanent housing apartments for people who have experienced domestic violence, intimate partner violence. It's opening July 1st. We don't have any applications in. And so if something was to happen during the school year and you needed to get out, we also have brand new, newly built apartments, private apartments, permanent placement for individuals. We have funding to help with furniture for that house, that apartment. We have financial backing for helping with food and clothing and transportation, all of these areas. Our agency really prides itself on being able to meet any need that you're facing. It could be anything at all, and we can help you brainstorm ideas to get through it together, of what's available within Plattsburgh or the surrounding areas. So we try to be a full service wraparound agency, and linking up with other providers if you need additional help too.
Casey, would you like to speak to those at Sexual Assault Services as well?
Sure. So we actually work a lot with Stop TV, so we have a pretty good referral relationship there. We can provide, so to jump back a little bit, Butterfly was talking about support and advocacy through the Title IX process that she can't offer. We can offer that. In addition to through the legal process, through other medical or mental health needs, we can provide resources for those too. In addition to the supportive counseling that we provide in-house, which is all being done virtually right now. I think we're all kind of in the same boat. Hopefully it'll be in person pretty soon, but that's all being done virtual right now as well.
I did just want to add one more thing I remembered. We also had an additional grant where we have legal aid. We have hired an attorney specifically to work with our clients. So you're not just calling and being put on a waiting list for legal aid. So it's a free service. They can give you, if the individual doesn't have the time to take on your case specifically, they can give you advice, legal advice. We can't, just because we don't have the professional backing to give that. Now we are able to have a somewhat staff member type of deal, collaboration with them specifically so that our clients aren't on a waiting list. And especially with issues with divorce, that's something in particular they work with, which people who are trying to do the criminal justice, there's a lot of hurdles there. So having that help in the civil area realm is wonderful, a wonderful asset to our agency.
Thank you so much. Really, lots of grants over there. Jackie, would you mind sharing? I know there's a lot of questions sometimes for our international students. What does the process look like for them in terms of how much you help and how much their status may change and things like that? So any misconceptions you can clear, as well as accommodations that may be available to them and resources.
Sure. So we are, of course, involved in the network of services that are available on campus. And that's kind of how we see our role. So oftentimes, because our students, we often work in local parentis. Students' families are very far away. And so we are called upon to do things that are more like a family than they are like professional services. So in those cases, we do our best to remain professional while also being sensitive to the student being far from home. So I know everyone on this call, I'm thoroughly impressed and admire the work that you all do, and am familiar with most of you. And we would I think international students are sometimes perplexed by the boundaries. They're unfamiliar with the cultural boundaries and the norms in the United States. And sometimes they feel uncomfortable because they're not sure if their boundaries are not the right ones, or if someone has crossed a boundary that for them may be beyond the pale, but in an American culture that is not. So it's a little confusing sometimes when we try to help students understand what those boundaries are, and that if they do not feel comfortable, then someone's crossed a boundary, regardless of whether that's a norm or not. I've been on the other side as well, international students who have been accused of crossing a boundary that was inappropriate, and trying to help that student understand them and manage the consequences of doing so. So we really work as a sort of a referral service for students to find the right resources, much like most of you do, either on campus or in some cases off campus.
Thank you. And can you also just speak to, sometimes there's like confusion a little bit about like who's going to find out, and I guess Butterfly can chime in there too. And sometimes we have students that might even fear if they're reporting that, you know, their immigration status is going to change, or their visa status is going to change. So a little bit clarifying that as well for them.
Sure. So it seems incredible to me that a student would even think that, but I have heard of students think if they bring forward some sort of accusation, or there's an issue that they're involved with, that it might negatively impact them. I think it's more of a panic response. When you talk them off the panic, they begin to understand that the system is meant to support them, not to make them more vulnerable. So that's an issue. Now, on the other side, again, if a student is being accused, or a student is the one perpetrating the issue, that student has severe consequences, both on campus and potentially visa-related issues. If a student is found guilty of a crime, their visa status is immediately terminated, and they are required to leave the United States immediately. So there are pretty severe consequences for a student who commits a crime. If it's less than a crime, of course, if it's judicial, then they would have the same consequences or as domestic students. But if it goes beyond that, the students have very severe consequences, including having to leave the country.
So, and I think that it's important to highlight that Gio and Jackie especially would be considered someone who's on a need-to-know basis if any report involves an individual, either as the reporting individual or accused in a Title IX case or a sexual or interpersonal violence case, for multiple different reasons. We lean on their expertise and their relationships with the students to know things that we should know, so that we can serve folks from an intersectional perspective. If someone comes from a country where there are specific norms and beliefs, it's not that that's going to excuse behavior, but it informs how I need to approach that person and interact with that person to explain it more thoroughly, or also in the way in which we're working to help folks to heal, you know. So there's still that accountability, because everybody's held accountable to the student code of conduct. That's for everyone, regardless of what country you come from, but they are the individuals that help us figure that out. It's also in situations where we need to get information based on their visa status, and it would be too complicated, I think, to go into that now, but part of what Jackie spoke about as well, there's a difference between someone who's here as a visiting student for a year versus someone who's enrolled as a student, a SUNY Plattsburgh student. They're not just visiting. So we've had to navigate those situations in different ways too. And it changes the way we can handle cases. So I need to know, is this person visiting, or are they a SUNY Plattsburgh student? Because if they're visiting, it impacts what next steps I need to take, and who we need to contact, and who we need to get into the loop, and how we should be serving folks. So we really appreciate and value that collaboration with Gio, because it helps us to be able to serve folks in a much better and inclusive way.
And just to be more specific, Butterfly, the students who are visiting, and many students who are visiting, are sponsored by governments, either our own or theirs, and they are held to a higher standard. So if something if there's a hint of impropriety, the organization may simply say, this student is not a good ambassador for their home country, and we wish that they be dismissed from the college, or not dismissed, but they must leave, regardless of what the circumstances are. So it's a pretty complicated matter.
Thank you so much. And Larry, I'm now coming over to you because there are some accommodations that you may be able to offer, or can you just speak a little bit to the process for those coming to student conduct, especially given, you know, the changes that went into effect in August?
Sure. So yes, there's been so much discussed over the last almost hour that ultimately works its way to my office. So I was waiting for this to happen. So for those that aren't aware, the conduct process serves as the back end for those students, back end of the process for those students who are accused of violating the student conduct manual. And then through the investigatory process, whether through University Police or through the Title IX office, those cases would be referred to my office for adjudication to determine whether or not, based on a preponderance of the evidence, the accused student who becomes a respondent through our process did or did not do what they're accused of. And of course, through due process, innocent to proven guilty or not responsible until proven responsible, among other rights of respondents and reporting individuals, all of those would have to be adhered to, and our office is held to making sure that all those rights are ensured for all those members throughout the process. And so to speak to what Zyaijah just said about accommodations, I mean, prior to 2020, the accommodation of providing virtual participation options was such a nuanced thing. And then now our entire process is, you know, this semester especially, is entirely virtual, like it is for many people. And so I could see something along those lines being integrated as a commonplace practice for cases that have such a highly sensitive nature. But just to speak specifically to, I think, Zyaijah, you're referencing potentially the final rule legislation that went through. I mean, one thing specific to that, and Butterfly, please correct me if I'm wrong from your perspective, but a requirement within the final rule is that all parties will have to succumb to in-person cross-examination, and that would be done through an advisor of choice or one that's provided by the college if there is no one identified. And so that, as I understand the language, it means that that person would have to participate fully in that cross-examination aspect of the case. And that means present. It doesn't mean necessarily in person, but virtually or something where a question is asked. The hearing officer, generally that would be me, has to determine prior to every answer of a question if that question is relevant to the case. And then if so, then the person who is being asked the question would have to respond to that to some whatever extent they choose. So that cases that fall into the final rule would still require the college to offer the option of remote accommodations and maybe some other accommodations depending on the circumstances. And of course, depending on where we are with COVID, that might limit some of the options we have, but there would still be the cross-examination piece while that's still in effect. Otherwise, I guess just to try to summarize in a nutshell, the process is if a student is held accountable at the end of the conduct process, depending on what they're found responsible for, referencing again what Butterfly mentioned, 129B, there are mandatory minimum sanctions for students who are found responsible for various violations of the conduct manual as it relates to sexual violence, harassment, coercion, dating violence, domestic violence, etc. And so all of those are highlighted and outlined in the student conduct manual. And so we, of course, as a college would enforce those sanctions as appropriate, depending on the findings of the case. I think Zyaijah interned in this office, so she has some insight. So anything I missed from Butterfly, Zyaijah's perspective?
No, the only thing I would add, which also is sometimes a misconception, is that you can enter a college process and a criminal process concurrently at the same time. So often, depending on what's needed in each of those cases, we would need in some capacity to work collaboratively and communicate to ensure that we're not impeding one of the investigations, but someone can choose to enter both of those processes at the same time or different times. Doing one does not remove the right of the other.
And they are independent processes, to add to that, and each have a different burden of proof. So that is an important distinction where our process is a preponderance of the evidence and the criminal process would be beyond a reasonable doubt. Correct? Right, Melinda?
Yes, but also to add too is that one thing that I've noticed, some questions I get is, even if someone has testified in the school proceeding, it does not alleviate them from having to testify in the criminal proceeding. And any and all statements and testimony used in the school proceeding would, unfortunately, under the statute, would have to be turned over in our case as well. But one testimony does not alleviate the other. And unfortunately, given the different burdens, there's not a guarantee if one is found one way that it'll be the same way criminally.
Thank you so much, everyone. So for those of you who are attending, please feel free to take and use the Q&A feature box if you have any questions that you may have thought of as you were listening today. The only other questions that I have left is to talk about involvement opportunities. So I know some of you just finished or wrapped up your involvement opportunities that are available. Some of you are just getting started. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'll start by sharing the Title IX's opportunity. So this past week, I actually just opened our internship and peer educator opportunity applications. So anyone can go to our Get Involved webpage on the SUNY Plattsburgh website, or you can go to the Title IX Instagram page, and in our bio, you will see the application for those opportunities. We are available to work with those who may need to be remote next semester, still given the circumstances, but anyone who's looking to work with the Title IX office as an intern or as a peer educator is more than welcome to set up a meeting with myself, but also look into the website and find out about the opportunities. There's social media, there's campaigns, there's community collaboration workshops, again, peer educator, where you're going into the classroom and facilitating the conversations yourself. So lots of opportunities. If there's one that's not there and you're interested in it, let us know. Let's see if we can work something out for you as well.
Also, I know that we do have interns in our office. I know when I was in college many moons ago, I did intern in a DA's office, and it struck my love for it. And it's a long time since, and I'm still doing that type of job. Even if you don't know if you want an internship in the office and you just want to have a conversation about potentially going to law school in general, because I know that there's a lot of questions people might have on whether or not it's for them or details about it, I'm more than happy to have you come into my office, have a conversation about even what I do in general. If that maybe strikes a chord with you and you're interested in that, I am all about that. So if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am all about mentoring and working with college students. So let me know.
I also have numerous interns. For those who don't know me, my door is always open. I do have several students who come and go into the department as if they are a part of it, and we love that. So right now, unfortunately, because of COVID, I only have one student, Jade. We love her. Unfortunately, she is going to be moving on in May. I am looking for interns. Well, I'm looking for either work study or interns, and you don't have to be a criminal justice major for me to figure out a way to get you an internship if it's necessary. So we have an array of things that we could do, from social media to statistics to ride along. So we can kind of shape it for the necessity of that program that you're involved in. I do have several people who have reached out. It looks like I will have at least 2 at this point for the fall. I would like to get back to the 6 to 8 that I had pre-COVID. So anyone that's interested in, a future in criminal justice, or just want to learn more about policing or what we do, or just, bridge the gap and facilitate that peer-to-peer safety with your fellow students, please either stop by or email me, and I will have something up once the semester ends, and I can play a little catch up.
Can I add one thing really, really quickly concerning the internships? I also want, even if you're not interested in interning in my office, and I'm pretty sure this applies to most offices, if you're a victim of a crime and you're concerned about college interns being here, or maybe someone of your peer being in the office because of an internship, we accommodate that. So one, they would never be touching your file or working on that case or looking at that case. And two, we would arrange for a meeting at your convenience where it'd be assured that you wouldn't have any incidental contact with anyone from your school, because your needs come first, and we would not want there to be any incidental contact or have you have the concern that you're afraid to talk to us because of students being in our office.
I can add to that as well. Thank you, Melinda, for adding that. We don't let any, we don't allow, given the nature of some offenses or even calls, we typically want to allow students involved in a lot of what I handle, any of the interpersonal violence or anything involving a mental health aspect. We don't want to put the students on any side of the court in that situation. So also something to be cognizant of. So thanks, Melinda, for adding that. It's important.
Let me pop in quickly. We offer lots of ways to get involved in housing and community living. We are just wrapping up our community advocate selection for the fall, but that doesn't mean students can't talk to us about next year as well, or even the spring. As well as we have just made our offers and have been accepted of our community directors. Those are our hall director positions. We have 7 graduate assistantships that we use for that. And we have 2 professional positions. So if anyone is a professional, we just listed a job yesterday. It's our community inclusion and involvement coordinator, and that person is one of our first-year residence hall directors. And if you have any interest in any of those positions, even if it's not something you're interested in doing now and you'd like to talk to us, please reach out to us. We're always happy to find out what you'd like to do and to help you make the moves that will help you in that application process further along. And we certainly are always accepting interns as well.
We always are accepting interns. I will actually put my email address in the Q&A section for everybody to be able to have, because I am the volunteer coordinator as well, specifically. So if you want to reach out to me, I do the education piece and the volunteering part. So any interns will come through my office as well, chat with me. But the big piece is that we have so many different positions. We have a housing navigator, we have a safe house dwelling coordinator, we have a criminal justice advocate, we have a crimes victim advocate, children care services, a couple other educator positions. We have some openings too for professionals available. If you go to BHSN website, they're all located on there in the career section. But the interns specifically, if there is something that you are looking to specify in, our agency is able to cater towards that. So if you wanted to do more criminal justice, we could do that kind of thing and have you available there, but also kind of see every other part of our agency and how that works too. So you can get all of the services we provide in that information.
Okay, one thing I want to add that I forgot earlier before talking about opportunities to get involved is that it's a misconception with our office, I think, is that we generate referrals. And so that is not the case. Those referrals come from other entities on campus. As I said, University Police, Title IX, Community Living Office. And so we receive them and adjudicate them. We do not charge people. Our office does not charge people for violating various sections of the conduct manual. And so those come to us, and then we facilitate that process. But in terms of involvement, we're always seeking interested people who, and this is students or employees who want to serve as student conduct board members for board hearings, appeal hearings. And there's at least one person on here that has served or serves in that capacity. And so if anybody's ever interested, please reach out to me or Sherry from my office, and we will get the ball rolling to do that. Also, we generally each year have people from the Student Affairs graduate program, in which someone, or I've tried to do 2 at a time, and that's just too much for everybody. So generally one person a year or a semester where they, start doing this work and find out, test drive it and see if it's for them, kind of like Melinda was saying. And then at least if it's not, then you find out quickly that it's not, and you can steer your boat to other ports. So those are the ways to get involved with our office. It's nice just for people to come by and say hi or talk, ask questions. It's really wonderful to have people here that are not required to be here. They're just want to stop by and chat. That's nice too.
And I would just add real quick to what Larry's saying, because I think we have the opposite misconceptions with our office. Our office has nothing to do with adjudication. So we don't make any determinations of fact. We just, frankly, again, are that impartial party taking the information and passing it on if it meets the criteria to go on to student conduct. So we don't decide whether or not someone's responsible.
We've got a few different options to get involved, specifically through sexual assault services. We have our certified rape crisis counselors. So those are trained volunteers who serve on our 24-hour hotline. We always need volunteers for that. When things are a little bit more normal and we're able to do community events, we can always have volunteers for things like color runs that we host, different events throughout Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I'm working on putting together an internship program through me, doing sexual assault prevention education. That's work in progress, but hopefully I'll get that up and running next academic year, maybe.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, as a reminder, if you did not know, this month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So the Title IX office is hosting a series of events, some of them in collaborations with people who are on this call or offices and agencies. So thank you so much to all of you who continue to work with us semester after semester, year after year. We've also launched a campaign. The name and the theme of our campaign is "The Time Is Now." To talk, to act, and to end sexual violence. So we really want people to get involved. Fill out the campaign. I put the link in the chat. It's open for anyone to fill out. Even if you're a community member, I left it open if you want to join in too. They'll be shared on our social media channels, as well as some will be placed throughout the campus. So please, if you have any interest, definitely participate there. We have a lot of different events, so stay tuned to email, stay tuned to digest, Instagram, Facebook, and just keep a watch for all the events you will see coming out of the Title IX office this month. But thank you so much, everyone. I wish you all a wonderful week and a wonderful day. Happy Friday. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.